Hello and welcome to this stitch along with me, Natasha, from the London Embroidery School. Today I'm going to be working on this Tamba piece where it is a really lovely different type of embroidery stitch. It's a bit of an unusual one. Some people haven't come across this, although I feel like if you're interested in embroidery you are likely to have seen Tambour work and maybe not even realised that it was Tambour work, as it's very popular with the couturiers and in really high fashion. This is often how beading and extensive areas of fill stitching will have been done. Anyway, I hope you're having a fabulous Friday. It's lovely to see so many of you join me, and I'm really pleased to be here. It's been a little while for those of you who have joined me before when I've done one of these. It's been a little while since I did one, so sorry about that, guys, my bad. But I have been extraordinarily busy. I had a little bit of holiday. It was lovely, thank you for asking, and then I came back and work was just mad. And yeah, we've just been so busy with everything, getting things in place for you guys, and you guys have been so involved and have just made our absolute lives with your reaction to the online classes. So yeah, just getting all of that together and keeping it going has kept me quite busy up till this point, and so I've just not been back online live, at least, to see you guys, but I'm here now. So how are you? How are you all doing? What have you been making in the meantime? Basically, I'd love to see. I want to know how you are and what you've been making. So do feel free to tell me. I love it when you get involved and I can see obviously your comments. If I do miss anyone's comment, it's not because I don't like you. It's simply because obviously I am stitching at the same time, and so I do sometimes miss some of them, but I love to know that you're there. Hello to, Virginia. Hello, Crystal Ingle. Yes, I definitely recognise your name. Lovely to have you back. 60 stitches, amazing to see you here as well. And you've been making embroidered masks. Very well done. I mean, very worthy indeed. Awesome to see you guys here. I'm just, yay. It's so nice to be back and to see how you're all doing. Have you been involved with our online classes, or are you brand new to the London Embroidery School today and joining me for the very first time? Or have you joined in today because you don't know what Tambour is? Because obviously I can spend some time telling you a little bit about that as well whilst we're here. Let me know what it is you would like to see and hear about today. Hello to KM Atelier. Nice to have you with us. Not a name I recognise, so if you are new, it's lovely to have had you join us today. And Simi Gentile, awesome to have you here. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Really sorry if I'm not. Doing my best. Awesome. So yes, I am tambouring today. And so Tambour is a bit of an unusual technique. As I say, you may have come across it before and not realised, but basically, it's a form of embroidery where you use a hook instead of a needle and thread. And yeah, so that's what I am doing at the moment. I am just doing it with stitches, which is often kind of referred to as like as blind tambour embroidery, because it doesn't have any beads or sequins, because it's very often used with beads or sequins or both. And as you can see, when you get into a bit of a rhythm of it, I am not the world's fastest tambourer. I'm just going to say that out there now. It's something that I pick up and put down. So there are people who do it all the time, and they are just like mad fast. But yeah, it is faster than either making a chain stitch, or if you're beading, it's definitely faster than beading with a needle, because you do really get into this rhythm and then you can actually like really get going with it. Hello to Curly Frangipan, I think it is. You're also new. Nice to have you here. So what fabrics do I use for Tamba? So for the Tamba, today I'm working on this piece which is on a silk organza. Generally polyester organza I wouldn't recommend just because it's a bit too weak, but silk is that bit more expensive. Like, disclaimer, yes, absolutely. But this kind, which I think is an Indian silk organza I'm using, is really super stable. You can see the weave really clearly in it, and that means that you do get that stability. It also has it's woven of two different coloured grains, so the warp is this sort of yellow colour, and the weft, which is the opposite grain, is in black, which does give it a nice sort of multi-tonal effect, which I wanted for this particular piece. I'm also working in a Madeira thread here. This is a machine embroidery thread, but I chose it, well, I've got two threads, but I chose this type of thread. They're both the same type, just different colours, because number one, it had this lovely ombre effect, and number two, it's got this lovely shiny silky quality to it that because I was deciding that I was only going to use, you know, a few colours and keep it quite minimal, I wanted to go with an ombre effect so that you get that multi-tonal feel to it, and because I knew I wanted to use Tamba but just use the stitches, so I decided to go for that ombre thread so that it's a bit more just a bit more interest to it. Looks more luxurious. That's what I was going for. So yeah, it's a viscose thread. See, I've got this one that I'm using at the moment, which is like green, yellow, pink and light blue, and then the other one is all shades of blue. And if I just give you a little look, I'm just going to lean over. So I have already done some of this piece, as you can see, and there's a lot of the blue up the top here, and then I'm sort of fading it out into the other one. I just saw somebody's question. I think it was about sequins. So I'm sorry I didn't CC the question, but I'm just going to talk a bit about sequins then instead, and hopefully I'll answer your question in the process. So with the sequins, yeah, you just want to place them and they'll be on the underside. So at the moment I am doing a little bit of an unusual approach to Tamba because I'm just using the stitches. However, if you were using it for beads or sequins, then the right side would be the underside, not the side that you can see with the hook. And that is the thing with Tambour, is that you're always working on the back. Now this can play into your advantage because it can mean that you can mark the back of your fabric with your pattern and hopefully that not coming through to the right side. Although a lot of the time, like I am doing here, Tambour is done on quite sheer fabrics because you want it to be, it does sort of help if you can see your hand underneath. Although very experienced embroiderers sort of tend not to be able to, or not to need to see their hand underneath, because obviously they know exactly where their hand is at all times, you know, down to the fraction of the millimetre, I mean. So yeah, having a sheer fabric can be an advantage and a disadvantage all at once. But yeah, the underside for sequins would be your right side, and you'd have all your sequins loaded up on the thread already. And then you're just using the underneath hand to sort of push them up and into place so that you can catch them as you make your stitches. I hope that answered the question. If it didn't, and anyone asks a question that I don't get to, please do direct message them to us. As I say, it's not because I don't want to answer it or anything like that. It's just simply that I wasn't looking at the phone at the right moment, to be brutally honest. So yeah, do direct message us. Love to hear from you, and I'll try and answer your questions on there instead if I miss you out. Now, Tambour I always think is quite an interesting one. You may have come across the word separately and recognise it as being a sort of family member of the word tambourine, and that is because both of the words stem from the French word for drum, which is timbre, and that's because you need to have your fabric stretched really tight like a drum. And so that's really what you're looking for when you set up your Tamba, is for the fabric to be super tight. And so yes, with your choice of fabric, you need to have something that's going to be stable enough not to fall apart, and not to get damaged by the frame when you do frame up, because you do need to be able to get it really tight. I am doing this in a seat frame, which is a round frame, and it's not going to be the couturier's choice of frame, but I think it is perfectly possible to do small pieces of Tamba in the round frames, and that sort of allows you at least to just get started. I think that's one of the big hurdles. The way you would normally do it is on a slate frame, which is like one of the big rectangular frames, and you sort of really stretch the fabric on it, and that's how you would do it, you know, if you were producing like a whole gown. Absolutely. Or if you have the space, you know, and resources to have a slate frame, because you need to have trestles for that so that it's supported but not attached to the trestles, then yeah, if you've got space and the means for that, absolutely go for it. But if you just want to try out Tamba, which so many people do, you know, you just want to see if you like it and hopefully fall in love with it, then you know, using a round frame, which is great for so many different types of embroidery, is a really good way to do that. You know, it makes it really accessible, and I think that's really important with things like embroidery, that, you know, a lot of the time it's just about giving it a go, and I feel pretty confident you'll probably fall in love with it when you do give it a go. How do you calculate the thread amount needed for sequins? I don't actually know that one straight up. Lady Soful, sorry, I haven't got an answer to hand for that one. Hands up. But I would say usually when I am starting a project with beads or sequins, I load up all of the beads onto the thread and just load it up onto a full reel. So sorry, I'm just going to stop stitching for a second and show you. So at the moment I have my reel of thread is still a full reel, and it's just completely continuous because that's what Tambour is great for. And I put it in a little dish so that it can pull off the top nice and smooth. And you see, like that, because it is a machine thread, and so it was designed to be on a spool and to run off the top. So if you think about that, it will help it to stop from getting over twisted when you're working with it. Yeah, so generally I don't do a calculation, but when I run out of beads, then I just end off that piece of thread and load up the new set and start again. And I tend not to put loads and loads of beads on, just because yeah, it can make it a little bit heavy and uncontrollable. So you don't want to go too mad with that. You're better off doing a little bit and you know, reloading and not losing them all because it was too heavy for the thread and them all falling off and going all over your room. Because if anyone's tried that, that's what's going to happen at some point. It's like a rite of passage. They're going to go everywhere, and you'll be finding them under your sofa for years to come. Life of the embroiderer, hey? But yeah, just keep a continuous thread, I think, is the easiest way around that. What's the distance between each puncture of the needle? About, for me, I've just done this by eye. I am just like freeballing it. It's about, I'd say maybe 3 or 4 millimeters. And I try and sort of brick my stitches so that each stitch sits halfway between the previous stitch that it sits next to, because I think that looks quite nice. But you do have to sort of elongate and shorten as necessary as well, for the shape and just where the turns and corners fall in the design. As you can see, I'm sort of working in a concentric fashion because I want this to all be quite organic, so I'm not fussing about that, to be perfectly honest. With this particular piece, this was just, I wanted to do some Tamba, and so I picked something that I wanted to work on and I got on with it pretty quickly. And I think that's also, like, a lot of embroidery is to do with the preparation. There is a lot of preparation for embroidery and you can't really get away from that. However, sometimes I feel that preparation becomes this like barrier, and it's a bit like starting a new textbook at new workbook at school. You know, you want to make it perfect, and so you plan and you plan and you plan, and you want the first page to be beautiful, but it's all gets a bit much. And sometimes you just need to take the bull by the horns and get started, because that fear of like perfection is actually becomes too much and becomes sort of stopping force. So if you're starting to feel that way, my advice would definitely be with a project to just get going with something, make a start, and things will happen. And when things are happening, I always think then you feel so much better about it. Let me just see if I have missed any questions. Sew embroidery. Sorry, I missed you out. Do you ever stab yourself while doing this? Yes, all the time. It's one of those things that you sort of get used to, although the more you do, the less you stab yourself. I would also say that today I did not do my nails freshly for this, and I normally would when I come and see you guys, because I like to look my best and show you my best face, and my face being my hands, obviously. But I didn't do that today because I'm tambouring. Because often, and it's mostly this thumb under here that you can't really see actually, but it's because you sort of end up scratching your thumb quite a lot, or I do at least, because that's this thumb underneath, I don't know if you can see it, it sort of gets twisted against the, sorry, when you twist the needle you sort of rub against it, and the needle, if you can see just here, can you see that? It's very sharp. Which obviously you want it to be, to punch cleanly through fabric, but that does mean that it's a little bit more of a hazard. I am right-handed, yes, and how left-hand, in exactly the same way for left-handed people. You can, I think you would probably twist the opposite way. I would need to check that with a left-handed colleague, to be honest. I am not left-handed, as I mentioned, so I haven't tried tambouring with my left hand. Shall we try? Shall we see how it goes? I mean, I've no idea how this is going to go. I've never done this before, but for you guys, I'll try it out. Okay, right. This is probably going to be funny. Oh, this is not going to go well. Oh, it's like I'm an absolute noob again. Oh my god. Oh, the concentration. Can you hear the concentration coming out of me? Yeah. Okay, tricky. Yeah, turns out I can't do it left-handed. Sorry. Interestingly enough, I do when I'm stitching, and I stitch with both hands for like monogramming, for example, then I have my left hand on top. So I thought I might be able to then, because then that's the more natural way for me to hold a needle, is actually left hand on top, right hand underneath. But yeah, who knew? I would say when you are tambouring though, what normally happens is you sort of roll it away from yourself, like here. Do you see that? So I go down and roll it away. So I guess you would still be rolling away, but that would obviously be in an anti-clockwise direction, where I'm currently going in a clockwise direction for the upward part of the stroke. I guess you would be anti-clockwise for for left-handed embroiderers. Do whatever's comfortable though. I do often find that, and I guess it's just a mark of having lived in a right-handed world for left-handed people, that quite a lot of left-handed embroiderers still embroider in the right-handed style. I guess it's a little bit like using vegetable peelers and that sort of thing. You sort of, as a left-handed person, adapt to what you do. Not saying that that's what you should do, but I do find a lot of the left-handed embroiderers I know still actually stitch as a right-handed person. Did that make any sense? I hope so. I'd say do what feels natural, is my advice on that. Sorry, I can see this question, so I'm just going to finish this thread off quickly. Hello, Nina Jarvis, 7. Nice to have you join us today. Nice to see that people are still joining us as well. Right, I'm just going to flick through the questions quickly while I finish up this thread. When do you need to replace the hook? When it feels dull, to be honest. That will depend on obviously how much you've used it and what you've been using it on as well. If you've been using something quite open, then you'll often find that there's really not that much stress being put on the hook to go through the fabric when the fabric is quite holey. So you don't really need to change them that often. But if you're feeling any resistance or you damage the needle at all, then I would say change up the needle at that point. That would be my advice. Any resistance, change it up. How long does it take to become proficient at Tamba? Well, I mean, how long is a piece of string? Everyone's different, and learning is always going to be, that different process for different people. So I would say try not to judge yourself against other people or expect it to take a particular amount of time. I'd say I've been tambouring on and off for about 10 years now. But I wouldn't say, I don't do it all the time. There are kind of professional embroiderers who, really specialise in Tamba, and so they would be tambouring, every day. And even if they happen to be working, say, on a collection at work that isn't Tamba related, they will probably go home and Tamba in order to make sure that they keep their skills up to standard and right in check. Because that's sort of the kind of dedication that it takes to be a professional embroiderer and to keep those skills as they should be. What type of net is it? It's silk organza that I'm using at the moment, so it's not a net at all. Tulle, if you're trying to use tulle often has some stretch in it, so do make sure that it doesn't have any stretch in it if you are planning on using tulle, basically. Something woven is usually superior for Tambour embroidery than something that's kind of particularly an octagonal net type of tulle will probably cause you some problems because it's got 6 sides to each of the holes. There will be some stretch, and stretch is not our friend when it comes to Tamba because we need it to be tight as a drum, hence the name. Oh, my thread's a little upset there. Rennie Lappy, hi, how are you? I am well, thank you for asking. How are you? Do I use any glue when I'm finished? I'll probably just check the knots and make sure that they are all okay, but I try to make sure that my knots are sufficient enough to not have to worry about trying to glue things when I'm done. At the moment, my biggest question for myself is actually which side I'm going to use as the right side, because this is, officially speaking, the back that I'm working on, but I do quite like the look of the double thread. The other side is a little bit more sparse because you've just got a single thread showing for each stitch, but it does look a bit sharper, so it's kind of, I still have to make the decision of which side I want to use as the right side. Is this a technique that could be used for wedding veils? Yes, but yeah, just check what type of net you're using. And I'd always say also make sure that it's kind of a high enough quality net. That's not trying to be judgy at all, but I always think with something like Tamba, where it's going to take a lot of hours if you're going to do an intricate design, which presumably you are if you've chosen to tambour it, then it needs to be good enough quality fabrics, for big projects this is, not for starting off, to, you know, warrant and support the amount of time and effort and beautiful work that you're going to be putting on it. And you want it to have that longevity, which I always think is, you know, really part of the whole feel of hand embroidery, making sure that your investment of your time and your skills are reflected in the quality of the work you produce and hopefully the materials that you also use. I'm using our luxury vintage Tamba handle here today, which is available from the London Embroidery School if you want one. There are also our regular Tamba handles on there, which are a little bit more economical if you are just starting off and want to give it a try. This particular one, I really like the feel of it in the hand. It is a sort of dark turned wood piece with brass fittings. And yeah, I will show you, sorry, I'll just get around this corner and I'll show you the handle. So it's a really nice piece and it does feel lovely to work with. I'm also, I think I probably showed them briefly earlier, using our luxury vintage embroidery scissors, which are these ones here. The cute little hen design, and they come with a lovely silk tassel. So they're also available on the London Embroidery School if you are interested. But we've got lots of bits on there for people that want to just boost your supplies a little bit. So do check them out if you need some new kit. And I mean, I don't know about you, but I always feel like I need new kit. Now, is anyone stitching along with me at home? I don't know whether you have joined me for a stitch along before. Originally, when we sort of named them, it was because we had just started the online classes and I thought that perhaps people would have a lot of questions and it would give them an opportunity to ask me those questions about the classes they were taking or, yeah, getting involved with us. Particularly on our very first class, which was the Valentino Roses class, which is free and still available. So if you haven't tried that out, you know, check it out. It's free. You might as well, and you can make some lovely roses. There's also, we've massively expanded our online classes range since then, and we have, I think, I want to say 12 different types of online classes, different techniques, that is. Some of which are just single classes, so they'd be about an hour. Some of which are sort of a series, possibly, you know, 3 or 4 parts of about an hour each of instruction. And so, yeah, there's quite a big range now from us. There's also the monogramming class series, of which part 1 is free. So if you are new to us and you want to try us out and see if you like us, that's fair enough. Check that out. You can find it on our website and yeah, see what we're all about. But we called it Stitch Along because I thought, yeah, people would have questions, and so it gave them an opportunity to start their stitching, probably get a little bit stuck, and then while I was stitching and hopefully able to answer their questions, they could ask them and join us here. At the moment, it seems like, yeah, you guys definitely obviously have questions, but not so much about what you yourselves are doing, which I'm just going to take to mean that from the classes you seem to sort of have most of your questions answered, hopefully, during the time. Becky Lou is stitching along. Wonderful. I'm glad somebody else is stitching along with me. Thank you for the multitasking comment. Yeah, I think it's one of my It's one of my skills, I'm going to say. If you are wondering with Tamba, it's still, it obviously is still quite popular as a pastime, but obviously it's not used as much as it has been historically. It really sort of had its heyday in probably the 18th century, and then it got a little bit bumpy for Tamba in the 19th century, because that's when machine embroidery started to take off and the machines themselves started to get developed, and so then the sort of need for extensive handwork wasn't really required as much. But it's still really popular to do, and there are lots of really talented Tamba style embroiderers, you know, in working about now. And as I say, it's still really popular with couture houses because it's the fastest and probably most effective way of beading a filled area by hand. And a lot of the time, if you're using a multitude of different types of beads, then Tambour really is the way to do it, because even machines that can apply beads themselves, they need them to be all of the same size and type and diameter of bead to do that. So there's still limitations. But that sort of hand done quality, that romantic feel that you get with hand embroidery, can't really be replaced necessarily by machine embroidered pieces. So I definitely think there is room for both out there in the world. And I always think that it's quite interesting that obviously we use this as timbre, and we call it Tamba, which is a French word, but has a lot of different embroidery techniques. It gets a little bit convoluted about, you know, where things really stemmed from. And I think a lot of the time, obviously very early examples of different techniques get lost in the sands of time. Number one, because fabric perishes, and you know, it just deteriorates. It's not made to live forever, and particularly when you're using like natural fibers, they will break down, which they're supposed to do. So there are some sort of early examples of Tamba from probably the 16th century, but the good examples start really from about the 18th century, when it was really popular, and there was the amount of Tamba being produced was a lot greater, and so more pieces, obviously by statistics, have survived. For things older than that, fabric wise, it needs to have been, you know, preserved really well, in, you know, really good conditions. So things like, you know, the Egyptian sarcophaguses and stuff, where it's sort of optimum conditions for keeping things for like millions of years. Not literally millions of years, you know what I mean, thousands of years. But in Asia, they have a very similar style, which is called Ari, which is done in a similar way, but it's sort of almost the perfect opposite of this. So an Ari hook, which we do also sell actually on the London Embroidery School if you find Tamba tricky and want to see if the other way around suits you better. But basically it's a much smaller hook. I know, can you imagine? It's a much smaller hook, and they apply the beads to the hook, if they are beading that is, and then form the chain in the same way as I am now, but then the beads are obviously on the double part of the chain rather than the single part. So yeah, the right side is the upper side, whereas right now the right side for me is the underneath side that you can't see. So for those of you who are keen to learn, I can see a few of you are asking, we are planning to do an online class. So this is a little exclusive for you guys, as you might have guessed from the subject of today's stitch along. We are planning to do one. It is still in the works, and it's going to be a few weeks yet. So you'll have to be a little bit more patient with us, I'm afraid. I'm going to keep you in suspense a little bit longer. But yeah, it's coming basically. And it's one we've been planning for a little while, but it has taken quite a lot of planning. So yes, it's coming. And so those of you who are keen to learn, then do look out for that. Make sure you're subscribed to our mailing list, so that you are the first to know when we release that, and you can get your hands on it. As yeah, the kits do take a bit of time for us to put together, and so obviously we want to get a nice backlog of those ready for you for when we launch. But that does mean that it's possible that they may be a little bit limited in the amount of kits that we're able to produce in a certain time. So yeah, we'll keep you updated basically, but make sure you join us on the mailing list so you know, and you'll get updates about what we've got going on and when things are getting released, and yeah, where you can get them basically. We'd love to kind of get you guys back in the studio for classes. I know that you're keen to do a weekend class, and we did offer a Tamba weekend class, but until things are safe enough for us to do that, we won't be offering it until we can say that we're sure. And at the moment that's not the case. We feel it's still too risky, so we're going to keep going with the online classes and trying to disseminate as much information in that way as we can instead. Hopefully that will help you a little bit along the way. It is a bit of a tricky one. So much about Tamba is about the feel of it, you know, and that is difficult to share with someone, even in person. I think so much of it is about the feel. It's a little bit like trying to, for those of you who drive, you know, the first time you try and find the biting point of a car, it's like if someone tries to describe it to you, it doesn't really mean anything until you manage it, and then you're like, oh, that's what they meant. So I think Tambour is a little bit like that. Hopefully that explains it a little bit to some of you. For those of you who drive, it will mean something. For those of you who don't, yeah, that probably is just unhelpful. But yeah, it's so much about feel and the angles that, yeah, it's an unusual one. But because there's just this one stitch really to master, it means that once you've got hold of that and you build up that muscle memory and the feel of what it should feel like, that stays with you. That's a bit like riding a bike. I mean, I don't know if I've got any more transport similes and metaphors to use for you guys today, but there's two. So I'm making a set apparently. But it's, yeah, this same stitch, this chain stitch that we're creating, that is the same for stitches alone, for beads, for sequins, for all the different weights of thread that you might use. And there are different sizes of needle that you can get to suit the different threads that you might like to use. So I'm currently using a medium needle, but there are fine and coarse ones available on the website as well if you want to go for, if you're using a finer grained fabric, then I'd say go for the fine one. If you're using a thicker thread, then go for the thicker needle. Okay, so I've got some more questions. How long to make the stitches? I just go with the flow. Quite literally, this piece I just wanted to get started with, and I found an image that I liked, which was some of like light reflecting on water, which is what this is. It's probably the wrong way up for you guys to see it in that way, but yeah, that's what I wanted to try and emulate, and so now I just make them as long as it pleases me. It doesn't, you get to know the feel of how long a stitch should be by like how much resistance there is on the needle, and like if your stitch is really long, it feels really hard to make the loop underneath, and so yeah, the path of least resistance guides me often. Not just in embroidery. Yeah, So for Yasmin P, sorry, I know you sent that question a little while ago and I've just been waffling on. It's this piece with the water on light on water, but I don't know what it's actually going to be yet. I just wanted to get started. It was one of those ones where I wanted to do, so I just did, basically. I don't know what it's going to be. I haven't got a particular plan. I didn't do it on a particularly large piece of fabric. I haven't got a lot of ease around the edge, which was probably a bit of an error. And I generally don't like to make embroidery just for embroidery's sake, if that makes sense. You know, it's always nice to have a plan of what you're going to do with it and for it to be a thing. But sometimes not everything has to mean something. You know, it's nice when it does, but maybe sometimes it doesn't have to mean something. So I think that's where I'm at with this piece. I'm just having a good time, basically, and enjoying myself. And I think for embroidery, that's enough, you know? I find Tamba quite meditative because it's this same motion over and over. You get that quite calming effect, and particularly when there isn't too much pressure on what it should look like and how long the stitches should be and whatnot, when I am just allowing things to develop naturally, then it is quite relaxing. You build up that rhythm and you get that, I don't know whether you can hear that on my mic, that gentle sort of tinkling sound of the thread pulling off the reel in the glass little pot, which is quite satisfying. Craft work. Should you be able to go up and down continuously? I mean towards you and away from you. I turn my work so I'm always working towards myself. Is that cheating? No. If it works for you, go right ahead and do it. Don't feel bad about that. As long as you're making beautiful work, what does it matter? But if you want to, you know, if you want to practice going each way, then that's great and that will make you better as an embroiderer. But you know, if it works for you, you know, you do that. Who else have we got? Mrs. Jabberwock. My hook changes direction when I go up versus when I go down. Yeah, as I say, I do what feels natural, and sometimes that changes, and yeah, I don't worry too much about it. I think as long as things keep happening, and as I say, it is quite a meditative thing for me, so yeah, I try not to stress about it, and it will be whatever it will be for pieces like this, at least. Do I use a fixed embroidery frame? So the frame I'm using today is a 10-inch seat frame, which, yeah, I've got I don't know whether you can see that at the edge. The underneath side is wrapped, which does help with the tension of the fabric, particularly as it is a round frame and not a slate frame. And I'm just going to keep this piece in here until it's done, which will help to maintain the tension whilst I'm still working on it. And hopefully, if my tension has been good throughout, when it comes out of the frame, it should still be nice and flat. That's the aim, but we don't know really until we take it out. Gives you a little thrill, a little unknown there for us. Are you guys interested in a Tamba course? I know I've said we're planning for it, but is that something that you are interested in? Do let me know. Maybe give me a thumbs up or something in the comments. That would be cool, so I can sort of gauge some interest. It's always nice to know. And have you taken any of our online classes already? If so, have you shared any pictures on your Instagram. We would love to see them. We always really love to see the things that you create and how you got along with them. Also, you have the chance to be our student of the month. I don't know if you guys know about this, but every month we have a student of the month, which at the moment is obviously pretty much just from our online classes. And so yeah, tag us in one of your pictures. We are at London M School, although I think you guys already know that. But yeah, tag us in your pictures and we will see them. And then at the end of each month, we pick someone to be our winner. And they get 10% off for anything on our website. So if you're planning on taking any more classes, I think it's definitely worthwhile. You can earn yourself a little extra saving. We are trying to introduce bundles as much as we can to our classes that have kits, and it sort of seems logical to do a bundle for, where you get the whole series and the equipment, either the mini kit or a deluxe kit, depending on what's required. It does vary technique to technique, as one, and then it comes with a little discount when you buy it all together, basically. So you can put double discount on things, basically, if you become our student of the month and buy a bundle. Win-win, right? Yeah, so think about that. If you've got any pictures you want to share with us, please do. I really love to see them, like so much. I can't tell you. I can't get that across to you enough. It really makes my day when I see what you guys have made and how you are achieving, and that you just make lovely things, you know? I'm here for that. Have you also been enjoying our YouTube channel? For those of you who don't really know, we're trying to build it up as a bit of an online resource for anyone who's interested in embroidery, really. You know, we've had the blog on our website, which will continue, don't get me wrong. If you prefer to ingest your embroidery information in more of a written form with some pictures, that's absolutely fine. But our YouTube channel, yeah, we're trying to put together some more videos which hopefully sort of demonstrate some of the techniques that we work on and use all the time in a professional embroidery studio. And so then, yeah, making that public and available as an embroidery resource, that's what it's there for, basically. So if you're struggling with anything, it might be worth having a little look at it and just seeing how you get along. There are sort of three main sections to it at the moment. It's an ever-changing beast. You know, what isn't in 2020, hey? But it's got the pro tips section, which is probably the most useful as a resource, where we share our tips and tricks on things that we do that make either embroidery easier or more accessible, or yeah, just more fun sometimes. And so that can be things like real basics, how to thread up the needle. There's a video on 4 different ways of doing that. And so you can, if it's something you regularly struggle with, then you can always pop on there and see if another technique that you perhaps haven't come across before suits you better. Or making quick knots, which are the little sort of twisted knots that embroiderers tend to use at the start of each of the threads. And they are, as the name suggests, they are quick. So if you do a lot of embroidery, they might be worth learning, as they will, you know, save you a few milliseconds every time. But if you do, like, say 20 hours of embroidery, those few milliseconds, they add up. And with crafts like embroidery, where it is a relatively slow process, you know, not that it's not worth the time, but anything you can do for that little bit more speed is probably a good thing. So there's the pro tips section. There's also sneak peeks, which is where we share a sneak peek or a little insight into a project we've been working on or something we've been doing, and so you get to see a little bit of behind the scenes, which is particularly important, I think, at the moment, as the studio, you know, we're not open to the public, and you know, no one is coming in and out. So it lets you see a little bit into our world if you are interested in that. And then all of our online class tasters are also on there. So if you're interested in any of the classes that you may not have already come across, you can see all of the videos of what's included in the class and what you can expect from it. They're all on there. So if you fancy it, check that out. So I am coming towards the end of my session here, and so I will be making this video, hopefully, if the tech gods are kind to me. I will pop this on our Instagram TV section in the series there. So if you have literally just joined us and you feel like you've missed out, don't worry, I'm going to make it available. And it should become a YouTube video at some point as well, so I'm sure if you missed out, you guys can catch up, or if you want to have a look over anything that I've been doing again today, then it will become available to you guys. If you've enjoyed this on the YouTube channel, then do make sure you subscribe, and make sure also that you ring the bell so that you are notified anytime we pop up a new video. And of course, please do give it a like for us. It really helps us to know what you enjoy and what types of content to make more of, basically, because it's all about you guys. So let me know what you want. If I've missed anything today or you have any further questions, do get in touch. You can DM me here. It's Natasha speaking at the moment. So yeah, get hold of me on there if you fancy having a chat. Or you can obviously email us. We are classes@embroidery.london. Or of course you can find us on Facebook as well, London Embroidery School. Am I going to show the right side? Yes, okay. Oh, here's one last little tip for you. When you're working with a thread and you don't want to lose that thread, but you want to stop, you can always just like tuck it in underneath the fabric, a bit like so, and then that will hold your thread, because obviously the thread is a chain, and so if you pull it, the whole thing will come undone. So yeah, okay, I'm going to try and give this a flip over. This might not be that gainly. One sec. So there we go. That's my piece up until now. This section here is where I've been working today. So this blue line here, I started probably about halfway through this, and I did a bit of this section here with the multicolored thread. Thank you all so much for joining me. It's been a real pleasure, and for all of those who've had questions or sent in comments or anything like that, it really means a lot to me that you guys get involved, and I really do love to hear from you. So yeah, it's going to be bye from me for now. Let me know if you want me to do another one of these, and maybe what subject you might like it to be on. What do you want to see? Let me know. Have fun, stay safe, and keep making beautiful things.